Hello, this is a short introduction to the operation of EPA Maps. I'm assuming most of you are using it to a certain degree, but this is just to give you help and advice on where to get the information I'm looking for the answers to the decision tree. So when you open up EPA Maps, you get a screen like I have here on the recording, and there's a couple of features that you need to change in order to make sure that we're just looking at water features. So the first key thing to do would be on the top left-hand corner where it says EPA Maps, click on the green button and actually select water features only. And this has a benefit that it changes the top headings here along the top, and they're all just going to be focused on water features. And this makes it easier for us to navigate essentially when we're going through the exercise. I'm going to zoom in to Letterfrack because this is a river system that we will use the day of the field trip. So it gives you an example of kind of what kind of background information you can do before you go out into the field, or alternatively when you come back into the field and you might have more questions. So this is the village of Letterfrack in Connemara, and you can see that there's the boundary line of the Connemara National Park is running along here on the green line, and you see the Owen Gareth River running alongside it. And we'll be working on this section of the river on the day of the field trip. So I'm going to zoom in. But this doesn't really give me an example of what it looks like on the ground. So to give you a view of your individual fields or plots, particularly at the farm level, then you want to be able to see those. Click on the three dots here on the bottom right-hand side and move your mouse up to Digital Globe. And this then will give you the most up-to-date visual satellite imagery that EPA Maps has plugged in. And now you get a better idea of basically what's happening on the ground. I can see the paths within the national park, and I can see various fields and bogland. So this then, and the river then in the middle. So to get started with some background information, most of you are probably coming onto this system and just looking at the PIP maps. But obviously for the decision tree activity, there's a couple of other questions I want you to consider. So the first one is your water course classified as a high status objective water body? And to do that and to find out, you go to status and risk, and you see that there are a number of tabs. Go to high status objectives, which is the bottom tab. Click on this, and then depending on what you use for your activity, I'm using a river here, but some of you might have lakes or transitional or coastal water bodies depending on where you're located. Click on the rivers in this particular instance, and you can see that I get a highlight in my background. So this indicates to me that my river is of high status objective water body. And if you're not sure, there's a legend on the left-hand side. And if you click on layers, it'll tell you what you've highlighted, and the cogs indicate then if it's present or not. And for some of you, you might not get anything highlighted in the background, and this indicates to you that you do not have a high status objective water body. The second question on the list is your watercourse protected under the EU Water Framework Directive Register of Protected Species? And to find this out, we go to the tab Protected Areas. We go to Water Framework Directive Register of Protected Areas from December 2018. This is the most up-to-date information we have. We click on this, and again, depending on the type of water body that you're looking at, you will click the most appropriate one. So again, I'm scrolling all the way down because I want to see if I've got dependent species. So I'm really focused on here whether the site is an SSE with water dependent species, and this will then kind of indicate to us if we do or don't. So again, you can see my background has turned yellow. So this indicates that I do have a site or a river site that runs through an SSE that has protected species. We don't know what the protected species are, but we just know that they're present. So they can be things like salmon, eels, otters. They can also be things like freshwater pearl mussel and then crayfish as well. These will be kind of the top ones that we're looking at. Again, your layer on the left-hand side will indicate to you that you've highlighted this layer on your mapping, and the cog will indicate to you if it's highlighted or not, whether it's present. The third question looks at whether the watercourse is in a priority area for action. And for most of you, you'll already know this because that's where you're going to be based most likely. But to find out, I suppose, maybe where more the boundaries are, particularly where the rivers are coming in and out of these areas, we go to taking action. So this is the tab on the end. And we just click on Water Framework Directive areas for action. And essentially, again, if this is highlighted, we'll know it's included within these priority area for actions. This is an interesting one, and just keep an eye because there are different levels of areas for action or reasons why an area might be protected. So again, click on your layers on the left-hand side, click on the cog, and the various colours will indicate whether that area is going to go forward for protection or for restoration. And again, because you are based in these areas mostly, then you might already know this. So mine is a light pink, so I'm in an area for restoration. And these are the kind of top three questions we're asking first. And this is kind of linked back then to the different tiers that you can be slotted into under the ACRES framework. So you'll have yes maybe to all three of the first questions, or you might have a yes and a no, and that's perfectly fine. So just see how it applies to the system that you're using the example on. Other questions then relate to more general water quality so that you have that background information. And this really helps when we're selecting the measures on the other side, because we know then what's the current status of these sites. So the next question, which is question 4, kind of looks at what is the current water quality status of these watercourses. So if you go to status and risk, you can see that we have the high status objective already highlighted. So we can bring that back up. And this time we can focus on what the water quality status is under the 2016 to 2021. And again, this is the most up-to-date information that's available. So click on status 2016 to 2021, and again, select the most appropriate water body type that you have. So I have a river, so this is where I'll collect it. And you can see that the river system that we're going to look at for the field trip is highlighted in green. If you're not sure about what the colour codes mean, again, click on your layer on the left-hand side, click on the clog, and it'll indicate what the different various colour signs mean. So green in this instance indicates good status water quality. Along with looking at the water quality, knowing the Q values is important as well, but these aren't available for all sites. But it's important to check if they are available for your site. So if you want to check if there are Q values along the stretch of river that you're interested in, go to Monitoring and Flow underneath the first tab, which is Q values. You click down and then just click Latest Q values, and these are actually updated automatically now. So this is kind of a nice plug-in feature. Waiting for the maps to load, and you can see along the stretch of river that we're going to be working on, we don't have any Q values taken at this stretch of river, and that's likely just because it's too far into the site. If you want to see if they're within your general area, just for kind of to get a feel for what might be going on, zoom out a little bit. Again, here you can see that for the plot that we're working in, we're mostly looking in good water status sites, and we do have a Q value over here on the left hand side, which is also green. Again, if you're undecided about what the colours mean, go to your layers, click on the cog, and we know that the green here is a Q value of 4, which is good status. So ultimately we expect within this subcatchment that we've got good status water quality, and the Q values are good as well. Basically then this gives us a good idea of what our water quality is. And now I would move to kind of what more the risks and pressures are and introduce the PIP maps. So again, going to pressures and activities, click on pollution impact potential, and then have a look at the individual PIP layers to see what might be going on at the various field levels. And again, you might be looking at it from an individual field perspective as opposed to a broader area here. For us within the Connemara National Park, it's easier to kind of look at a bigger area because the national park own it. But you might be looking at an individual field there. To make things a little bit clearer, if the colours are becoming a little bit too much as well, don't forget you can take off the layers. So we can take off some of the earlier layers to make it easier to read. Particularly when there's lots of pinks and purples coming up, sometimes it can get a bit confusing. So we'll pick the pip layer here for the phosphorus and see what happens. And just keep an eye here that I'm now at 50 meters, so nothing happens when the pip layer is added. And I have made a note on the instructions that you will have to come back to 500 meters really to see the pip maps. So just in case you're worried that nothing's happening when you're looking at some of these maps, it's because you're too close. So you do need to scroll back a bit. Here you can see that I'm at 500 meters and all of a sudden my mapping system triggers essentially. Again, if you're undecided about what the colours mean, look at the cog and you'll see that the pips then are ranked 1 to 7. And I'm mostly in a pip 4, pip 5 area. So I'm kind of in the middle, but they're not classified as high status pink pip maps. So we're kind of just in that moderate zone. Again, looking then at what the flow delivery paths might be. Here it indicates to us along our river where we think maybe there may be impact coming from. And then when we click on the delivery points, again, where is it actually potentially impacting on the river system? Where is it getting in? And just remember that these are indicative maps. So when you add your farm walk survey information, then some of these may be valid and then others may not. So adding this information along with your farm walk together will give you a better idea of where measures then should be really focused. And again, just remember here that you have to be at around 500 meters to see the pip for phosphorus, but you can be a little bit closer for the delivery points and the delivery paths at 200 meters, but you're still not getting that clarity that you'd really like. So the farm walks are quite important here. The other one then just to check out at the end is whether you've got a pip for nitrate and to see what the issues are might be here. But typically you're going to have one or the other mostly. So again, clicking on the cog, I can see here I've got a pip rank rating of 6, 7, mostly 7 really for my nitrogen. So I have no major issues around nitrogen. So I'm going to click that button back off so I can just focus on my phosphorus impact. The final two sections help us put a little bit more additional information together. We have obviously our pip map, so we know there are pressures here within the system from phosphorus, but there's additional work that the EPA and NORPRO also have added to these maps. And that's whether agriculture is deemed a significant impact on this river system. So to find this out, if you go back to your pressures and activities, and we just pull up our pollution impact potential tab, and this time select a water course that we have. So in my particular case, I have a river, so I'm looking at river significant pressures. And here it gives you a whole list of different pressures that can be found on my river systems. And I'm most interested in the second tab here, which is for agriculture. And this doesn't indicate what the pressure is, it just says whether there is or is not a pressure. Again, it might get a bit confusing to see with all the layers, so don't be afraid to pull off some of them momentarily just to see if it triggers. So again, you can see here that for me, this river is impacted by agriculture. I'm just going to double check that because, yeah, so this was the orange line. So there is an agricultural impact on this site deemed by the EPA. And then if you further want to find out what exactly that impact might be, if you go to taking action and go to targeting agricultural measures, you'll get a feel for what the EPA and law profile are the issues within these sites. You can see that now my river is covered in a blue layer. And to find out what that blue layer is, again, go to your layers, click on the cog, and you'll see I've got a navy flag, which means for phosphorus and sediment loss. So this then will indicate to you the types of measures you should consider within these sites. So overall, the mapping system, when you add all of the layers, indicate to you that we have a good status site. So we want to maintain that. That's what we're looking to do on these type of sites. There are moderate risks from PIP, essentially, in that we're kind of 4 or 5, but we're very close obviously to a 3, and we know that phosphorus is the key issues here. So this then helps us inform what exactly the measures might be. And when we're looking at measures that are associated with phosphorus, we're looking to ultimately maintain the situation, so we don't want any high risk activities coming into the area. And then from an acres perspective, you could consider options like woody riparian buffer zones or grassy buffer zones, potentially depending on the soil types that are along the river alluvial area, types of trees that can be planted, and making sure that grazing is managed, that it's not intensive. And looking at stocking densities maybe in the winter time. So these would be some of the options then that you could consider for this site. So I hope this is helpful. If you have any questions, you can email me or you can get in contact with me on Friday at 10 o'clock at the Q&A. So thank you.